Amnesty International has urged the United Nations Human Rights Council to strengthen the existing Sri Lanka accountability project of the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights and to set up an expert mechanism on Sri Lanka to monitor, report, provide recommendations on human rights concerns that are at the core of the current crisis. In a statement, Amnesty International said, quote, "Sri Lanka has a long history of crimes under international law and serious human rights violations, including many that are recent. The Sri Lankan government's unwillingness to address questions of accountability, rampant impunity, targeted weakening of independent institutions and redress mechanisms, as well as the lack of checks and balances, abuse of power, nepotism and corruption have collectively contributed to the current crisis." It also went on to note, quote, "The recent change in the presidency following the unprecedented popular public protests has not addressed the root causes and the negative trends that led to this crisis," end quote. The human rights group also highlighted that on the 8th of August, UN experts warned Sri Lanka of its misuse of emergency measures, but violations continued in contravention of Sri Lanka's international obligations under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Commenting on the Prevention of Terrorism Act, Amnesty International pointed out that the legislation has disproportionately targeted government critics, journalists and minorities to date. Amnesty International urged the UNHRC to vote for a resolution to set up an expert mechanism on Sri Lanka that can report annually to the UNHRC with additional reports to the UN General Assembly for an initial period of 2 years at a minimum, with a mandate to number 1. Act as an independent international observer and analyst, monitor and report on the human rights implications of the current crisis. Number 2. Review previous findings by UN entities, including those by OHCHR, UN Special Procedure Mechanisms, UN treaty bodies and other relevant mechanisms, as well as human rights commitments made by the Sri Lankan government, and present a comprehensive report. Number 3. Vote to extend the mandate of the Sri Lanka Accountability Project for a minimum of 2 years and include provisions to strengthen the project. Amnesty International called on the UNHRC to urge the Sri Lankan government to number 1. Repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act and issue an immediate moratorium on its use in the interim period, review the detention of those held under the PTA, immediately release all those not facing internationally recognizable charges, ensure all PTA detainees, including those undergoing pre-trial detention, are tried promptly and fairly in a regular court and are provided access to legal counsel on a confidential basis and to family members and friends at regular intervals. Number 2. End the crackdown on peaceful protesters that is having a chilling effect on the freedom of expression, opinion and peaceful assembly. Number 3. Bringing in the necessary legislative changes to deliver on their respective mandates as established. Number 4. Promptly accede to the Roman Statute of the International Criminal Court and implement it fully under national law. The human rights group also urged the UN member states to explore other options to advance accountability internationally in the absence of credible domestic processes, in line with the recommendation made by the High Commissioner for Human Rights.